Hello, I'm Meryl3 and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a good hard look at the Dark Oak Forest biome and seeing what we can do build-wise. For example, what genre or style of build is compatible with the biome. And in this case, I've chosen a Southeast Asian style of build. So I've made a little lakeside village called Okukotan, try saying that one fast, to try and show you what kind of tests and challenges you're going to face when building in this biome. As always, I'm going to be breaking up the video into different sections. We'll start with the planning, then move on to the buildings, fill out the internals of those buildings, then take a closer look at the surroundings. And again, as always, if you're only interested in one of these parts, the timestamps are in the description so you can find what you're looking for real fast. The build is also going to be completely survival friendly, so all of the materials you can obtain in survival mode without having to use commands, creative mode, or the debug stick, which I think is a nice plus. Though, for speed, I have built this in creative mode, but you can follow along at your own pace. If you're not already in the Discord, consider joining us and telling me what I should be doing next, and what kind of things you want to see. And with that all out of the way, let's get into the video. Starting off with a freshly generated oak forest, you're gonna want to start clearing out the trees and making a space for the build. Remember to save the logs that you're getting here if you're doing this in survival mode, as it's gonna be super useful later on when we're doing the actual building. And once you've made a clearing big enough, it's time to think about the terraforming. We're gonna be shaping the land into nice smooth curves as always, and making some different shapes of islands in this little lake here. Here, I'm shaping the hill so that it has a nice flat top so that we can put a temple on it later, but I'll show you that later when we do the actual building planning, and not just the terraformation. But in the meantime, as I said, just keep flattening out that terrain and making the islands look exactly how you want them. And for me, that meant flattening off the tops and making them fairly small so that you can have little decorations but not mainly a building, as those are mainly just going to be for the mainland. Also make sure the hills on the mainland aren't too steep and make sure you do have flat enough ground to build houses on, because that's going to be quite important. As well, overhanging houses are cool, you don't want them all to be overhanging. Next up, let's have a little look at those coastlines we've created, both on the islands and the mainland here. I've decided that a mix of sand and grass is going to be perfect for the outlines, and just creating a little mini beach on each one of the islands and the mainlands. And while you don't have to do this or use the same materials as me, I felt that it created a nice little atmosphere and it just made it look a little bit better. So I went around the whole outline and just created these little sandbars, which I felt just added a little bit of atmosphere. I also went ahead and dotted in the grass to the beaches, which, again, atmosphere. For me, it just filled everything out really nicely. But as you can see here, if you're not happy with the sand, another alternative is stone walls like this. So you can build those up with the stone bricks, stone, and the stone slabs. And again, it helps sell the look. It really does, especially once we have the other decorations in, but you'll see that later. With these little seawalls, I actually chose to only include some of the mainland in it, not all of it. And moving away from terraforming and onto planning, we can see here we're going to start with the paths. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos where I'm doing the large builds, you'll know that I'm quite a fan of doing paths first and building second. And if that doesn't go with your style, feel free to do it the other way around, but this is how I'm going to be doing this tutorial. I'm keeping the paths fairly wide here, using a mix of just the path block and gravel to dot in a little bit. I'm also making sure that some of the paths aren't actually connected across the islands, because I'm going to be relying on docks a little bit as well. And finally, for our planning stage, let's get in these buildings. Here I'm using red concrete to outline where I want a building to be, and blue concrete to outline where I want a landmark of some kind to be. Whether that's a little rock garden, or a shrine, or anything like that. I've left it open to my own interpretation in the future here. And straight into the buildings. Here you can see we're going to be using trapdoors a lot. Specifically, birch trapdoors. The contrast of the light birch and the dark oak logs is gonna look really nice once this is all completed. So stockpile that birch as you're building these. The next thing you'll want to do is get some unique looking materials like prismarine. Prismarine slabs here are gonna be the basis of the roof, which you're gonna build up in a fairly even manner until the center, where I've actually got a raised center here. I've also decided to make a wooden rim around the edge and the center wooden as well, which I felt helped the contrast a lot, as looking at a pure blue roof is a little bit jarring. You can also see in this build here, just to the side, we're using a lot of logs for this. They're not just being used for the corners, but also the tops, bottoms, and the supports in between. Which is why I was saying to save them earlier, if you're in survival, that is. Also take care to use some fences and different types of wood to decorate it up, as that helps the depth of the build, which otherwise would be quite flat. And lantern blocks just fit in perfectly with the build style we're using, so use them rather than torches. It just makes sense. Of course, if you're in 1.16 soul lanterns, they look good as well. A little tip for if you're making a whole village rather than just a couple of houses: if you're making all the roofs out of the same material, it's gonna look quite flat from a distance and from above, so vary it up a little bit. Here I've decided to use nether brick as an alternate material for the roof of this one, as well as making it a slightly different shape from all the other houses. I also decided to use packed kelp blocks in front of all these houses to just give it a little bit more depth, as walking out of a house directly onto the grass just didn't feel right for me. Up until now, all the structures we've built so far have just been one-story houses. Here I decided rather than just continuing that, I'd make a pagoda, which is going to follow the same style, but be a lot taller and break up the skyline a lot. So, adds a lot of good variation to the build. Which we want. As you can see here, each layer that we're building here actually looks the same as a single story house that we've built before. But with the exception that each of the roof bits that we are building is a little bit narrower than the one before, up until the very last layer where we're going to have a big curved roof. It actually took me a little while to find a design for the roof that I liked. But eventually I decided that I'd do the same kind of roof, but make the flared corners a lot bigger. Let's take a look here at this one as we build it out, 3 or 4 blocks out with stairs and slabs, and then hang lanterns underneath it and repeat it for all 4 corners. Once all 4 are done and joined up, it just looks that little bit better. I also decided to raise the centre bit just a little bit so that it stands out over the flared corners we made. Other than that though, the design of the roof does stay relatively unchanged. The only other change we're going to make to the design of the pagoda before we move on is to move the trapdoors in 1 block on some of them, which helps with the depth. Here I'm going to be looking at internals now. And we're actually going to be leaving it quite simplistic here. When I was building this, I felt the best way to decorate it would be with the surroundings, but I did make sure to leave plenty of room inside the build so that we could have some internals and furniture. So here in that pagoda, we're actually going to be building up a little miniature dojo here, using scaffolding for the floor, which is a design you've probably actually seen before in Hermitcraft episodes. Then after filling it all up with wooden slabs and lighting it with lanterns, we'll move on to the second floor. We'll be using a healthy dose of spruce trapdoors, our lord and saviour, to decorate the floor space. And we'll be making a little wooden desk out of slabs and stairs just to fill in the space. And on the final floor of the pagoda, we're actually just going to be decorating it with some bells we're going to hang from the ceiling, alongside some lanterns to light it up. Let's move on now to one of the smaller houses that we've got. In the first house that we built, there's actually not a whole lot of space for decoration, so we're actually just going to be keeping a lot of the wall space completely undecorated, but we're going to be using the floor space and dipping it down a little bit by about a half slab to make a little desk and a table. And dipping that down by that half slab gives it a lot of depth, a surprising amount, and it looks really nice in the interior of the build. On that table, you'll want to be placing something like sea pickles, turtle eggs, which here are just retextured candles, or fish, which gives a little bit of context as to why there's a table there in the first place, and makes it a little bit more believable for someone looking at the build. And for our last little decoration bit, I do want to be looking a lot at the internals, especially the walls. We've already seen how the floors are done and how the walls on the outside are done, but I want to take an especially close look at how we're making the ones on the inside. You could see there just off the right hand side of the camera that we were using some different stairs to make a little mesh wall, and we've also used different trapdoors here like acacia to make the little inside wall just here, which makes the insides feel cozy but not claustrophobic. And now we're finally onto the surroundings, the big bit of the build. When doing the surroundings for this build, I kept in mind a couple of different styles that I ended up reusing across the whole build. Firstly, the decorations always had cobblestone and bamboo as part of them. And secondly, it needed to stay in the line of sight of someone who was just walking around the paths in survival mode, which made it trickier to plan, but the effect is much nicer. And you can see also, just with these clips I'm rolling, how we've built a few docks around the build, since, after all, it is a lakeside build. This stage is also going to be when we're filling in these little blue concrete areas that we've made, as each one of them was a planned monument of some kind. And you can see here I'm actually just replacing that little blue monument marker here with a little stone bridge and making the island that it was on into a little Japanese garden, which I thought suited the build really well. And you can see here on the left we're using bamboo, a couple of lilacs and various different blocks to decorate up the temple and the temple grounds. When I was building the surroundings, I felt that the surrounding vanilla trees just weren't good enough at conveying an atmosphere, so I decided to make a couple of custom trees just at the back of the build. Originally, I went into it thinking I could use coral blocks as a sort of cherry blossom substitute. But eventually I did give up on that idea, as it was a little hard to do with, keeping it watered and all that. So instead I used birch leaves, which fitted a little better I thought. I'm sure at some point somebody could do the coral, but not me and not now. Aside from the tree, however, on the left here we have a little well design. This well design is actually a Nordic style that I used in a previous build, a much bigger one, but that fitted fine here as well if the materials were changed. And now that we've removed the blur here, you can see just what we're creating, and how all these decorations that I'm talking about add up to make a really nice atmosphere, like torii gates, shrines, seawalls, and other shrubbery just catches your eye, and fills up all the sightlines of your builds, just making it that little bit better, and more full to look at. And with that, we're finally done, so let's take a step back and see what we've created today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like and subscribe, because there'll be more content like it soon. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.